Hello, my name is Jay Walter, and this is Rebuilding. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "A mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions." So let's stretch our minds, find answers to problems, overcome fears, and rebuild our first kingdom. Welcome to Rebuilding today. We have a fantastic program planned for you. And very special guest. You know how people struggle with porn addiction, have been told they will be fighting it for the rest of their life, and it just makes them feel hopeless, stuck, not worth even trying anymore. Well, Bob Gardner struggled with his own porn addiction for 18 years before finally finding a way to permanently end it. Now he helps others finally solve the root cause of their addiction so they can live an amazing life without ever having to fight it again. Well, welcome, Bob, to Rebuilding. I'm so glad that you chose to join us today.
Dude, it's my pleasure, my honor. Anything I can do to help.
Yeah. So, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about the background, what put you on the road to developing this process, this program, whatever you call it.
Yeah. What we call it the freedom formula where I come from.
Oh,
but yeah.
Okay. I should have asked you that before, so I wouldn't have struggled with coming up with a name for it. So
no worries. That's my job to come up with the name anyway.
That's right.
You're just trying to make me sound like an expert. You're doing great. Look, 18 years inside of addiction. I started when I was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. Looking at pornography. Some people don't think this is a bad thing. There's a lot of people on the planet that feel like there's nothing wrong with pornography or anything else like that.
Yes.
And that's their prerogative. That's fine. In my life, in retrospect, what I see is outside of all of the scientific data on it, outside of all the religious moral implications of it, what I saw was the way that it affected me personally, mm-hmm. the way that I couldn't relate with people. The way that I couldn't look them in the eye sometimes, the way that I thought about people and used them as a means to an end, because ultimately what entertains you trains you. And so there I am entertaining myself to look at people and women specifically as a means for me to cope with my life, for me to feel better, for me to have certain kinds of experiences. And I ended up treating them that way. And it got to the point where when I walked into a room, the first thing my mind would unconsciously do is scout out all of the pretty women in the room and take their measurements, so to speak, mm-hmm. just so that I could figure that out. And that's not a place I wanted to be. 14 years old, I was just curious about how everything works. So it's not like I was addicted right away or something.
Right.
But it didn't take long before any time that I had a chance, I was back at it. And that went on and off for years. And then as the internet grew and access became more prevalent and I had a computer of my own and free time of my own, and I wasn't shepherded and parented anymore because I was living on my own, all of a sudden it went from, well, I got it when I could, to periods of time where I was binging for hours and I wasn't doing my work. I wasn't doing schoolwork. I wasn't doing job related work. It was very unproductive. I was wasting time. At home, I was frustrated in my relationship with my wife. I wasn't very present with my children. And I missed so much of their life. And there was just tons of guilt and shame. And then on top of that, the kind of religious teaching that I was going to hell and everybody else telling me that I was just going to be stuck in this forever, that this is what addiction is. It's a disease. You can never get over it. And there's no way to do anything with it but to manage it, cope with it, and whatnot. And I got to a point where I was looking at the rest of my life thinking, I don't want to live a life like this. If I have to spend the rest of my life this way, it's not worth living anymore.
So things were pretty bleak then, it seems, in your mind. That, and I can understand some of that. I don't know that I got that far into pornography, but I dabbled myself, and this is a big. It's kind of a common thing that when you're young, hey, this is the cool thing to do. All your friends say, hey, come look at this, and and you start out that way. And, but yeah, it seems like it could lead you down a pretty bleak road.
Yeah. And it has for many of the people we've worked with, hundreds of clients by now. Many of them have gotten to the place of having suicidal thoughts, massive amounts of depression and anxiety. And for me, I thought pornography was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to realize that it wasn't, that pornography was my solution to the problem.
Oh, okay.
Pornography felt great. Anybody who's looking at pornography and tells me that they don't enjoy it is somebody who's not really engaged with it. They're thinking about it. But if you're really in the moment, it feels great. It releases all kinds of wonderful things that the human body is designed to experience. And that was a step up for me from how I was living the rest of my life. Pornography was my pacifier. It was my solution to my own internal misery and whatever was going on the inside, what we call a root cause.
All right. Kind of self-medicating.
Yeah. And some people do it with alcohol. Some people do it with opioids. Right. Some people do it with any number of things. Facebook, Gmail, like screaming at drivers on the road, whatever they got to do to make themselves feel better.
Yeah, this little 4-inch screen we carry around in our hands all the time and can't stop looking at.
And so there I was. I realized, oh my gosh, I like porn. And then that made me think I was going to go to hell for a minute because I was waiting for lightning to strike. Like, oh no, I'm not supposed to like porn. It's a bad thing. I've seen what it's done in my life. I'm not supposed to like it. Does that mean I'm doomed? Until I realized that the reason I liked it had nothing to do with being a pervert, had nothing to do with being attracted to women, and had everything to do with the way I got to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what started me down a road to be like, okay, well, so how come I feel so bad in the first place? To where I need that in order to feel better. And what would happen if I could handle what was causing me to feel so bad so that pornography was a step down instead of a step up? And that's what led to total freedom, to where today there's no urges, temptations to go look at pornography. It's not a thing. You don't have to fight it the rest of your life, any of that.
Right.
But I just kind of got fed up with everybody's telling me that it's impossible to get over. And I either am I going to live the rest of my life this way and I don't want to, or I got to find another way out. So I just went with finding another way out.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Well, when you're in the depths of this, did you feel like you were the only person that had gotten this far? Did you feel like you were alone in the struggle?
Yeah, so I think everybody does to a certain extent, because it's hard to connect the words. Outside, people will talk about how pornography is a big problem in society, but that's all abstract. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And so when you have this thing, you're like, oh, it's a big problem in society, and I'm one of those perverts, it's like I'm alone. Everybody I know doesn't have the problem, though. It's just me still.
Right.
So you do feel, at least I felt, and everybody I've worked with, same thing. You feel very, very much alone, even in a crowd. And it's only when you actually meet somebody face to face or work with somebody face to face that all of a sudden you start to recognize, oh, dude, this person really understands where I get. That's part of the reason why some programs are so powerful, not because they have good tools or techniques. They just put you in the room with other people where you suddenly can let go of the feeling of having to be alone. That alone is already a helpful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Break that isolation cycle that you tend to do when you think you're the only person and you're bad and you're going to hell or whatever.
Yeah.
Break that isolation cycle. I've seen that work so many times in a lot of people's different problems.
Yeah, totally. When you can finally share the truth and own the truth of what's going on with you, then that sets you free at a certain level. That's why confessing to bishops and ecclesiastical leaders is helpful. Not because they really understand what's going on, especially with this one. There's not many that really understand what to do to help a person out of it. But at least them having a listening ear offers the other person a chance to get it off their chest to where they don't feel so alone. And that's what usually gives them, they usually walk out of those situations feeling like, oh man, I feel so much better now and I'm going to do so much better And that lasts for a little bit until it comes back, because they still haven't learned how to change their life and whatnot. They just got it off their chest a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I felt totally in despair, totally alone. And it wasn't until 2009 when I had he was actually a bishop in the church that I went to. And he handed me a series of books that said, hey, this is a huge problem. And I started reading up about it. And that's when I was like, oh, addiction, like this is a legit thing. It's not just me being broken. Okay. So, and that was the first time that the thought that this wasn't just I'm a messed up dude occurred to me.
Okay. So what was the process from there, that once you started reading these things, or started realizing that you had this issue and wanted to work your way out of, what was the process you went through?
So I didn't want to pay for help. I didn't want anybody to know I had the problem. And I only told as much of the truth as I needed in order to kind of get things off my chest. Mm-hmm. So I kind of think about it like somebody who's sick, like I feel poison inside, so I'm going to vomit. Bleh. And so I would vomit in like doses. And my wife, she just was the receiver of the vomit. And what I see now happen a lot of times with people who are doing this is they don't realize that it's poisonous to them too. So then now the wives are sitting with vomit in their lap and they're stifling their gag reflex and they're trying not to vomit back, or they got to run out of the room or whatever else is going on. But now the question of them healing is out of the picture because they're dealing with just somebody else's vomit.
Right.
So that's what I was doing. I would let my wife know a little bit here, a little bit there. I would talk about it a little bit here, a little bit there. And I went searching for programs, at first anonymous programs, any anonymous programs I could find that would give me tools and help me kind of wrap my head around it. Online programs, offline programs I called into anonymously. And once those weren't working, I started paying for other programs. And so then I paid for some programs that were not anonymous. They were online, offline, phone calls. And then I paid for more help. And then I went to seminars and I went to like try and understand psychology. And then I certified in various different healing methods to try and help me figure that one out, and spent years doing that. I dove deep into mindfulness. I went and met like ex-Russian spies in the backwoods of Canada. Wow. And had them like stick knives on my throat and all kinds of stuff so that I could figure out how to manage my emotional state and really drive in, well, what the heck is going on with me? I mean, I went all over the place. I talked to counselors. I went to 12-step programs. And I learned some good tools along the way. Some pieces of the puzzle, for sure, I picked up around there. And
with all that effort, I can't imagine you didn't pick up any tools. But
yeah, no kidding, right? But unfortunately, there wasn't a clear picture. There was no clear, like, okay, you got all these tools, but now, okay, I'm still looking at porn. Maybe not as much as I used to, but that doesn't seem to me to be a victory. And I'm not here to get to the end of my life and go back to the pearly gates and say, hey, God, here's my resume. I didn't look at porn for my whole life. Like, that doesn't seem to me to be an achievement. So that's when I got to a point where I said, look, if nobody has an answer, then I've either got to find one or I just got to give up. Because I had already spent 5 years of my life. I'd spent well over $50,000 flying places, learning things, trying things. And while I was getting some temporary results and relief, my life was nowhere better. And the same thing that was causing my addictive problems, which I didn't know at the time, again, was the same thing that was causing all of my other problems in relationships and was causing my problems in terms of how I thought about operating a business and performing at work and how I was parenting. The same root issue was underneath all of it. And I didn't know anything about root issues. I mean, some counselors talked about limiting stuff or they had theories about it, but none of those things seemed to work for me. And so I was like, fine, I'm just going to make my own answer. I'm going to follow my gut. I'm just going to, whatever harebrained idea I got, I'm going to go with. And there were a couple of harebrained ideas that were not good ideas. I don't recommend the trial and error approach. If you can at all find someone who can help you shortcut it. I mean, yes. fortunately, it worked out for me, but I almost got divorced in the middle of it. And I almost lost 4 kids because of that, because I was busy trying to figure it out on my own because I didn't have anybody I could turn to.
Right.
So, but I started getting these ideas and I started piecing things together until all of a sudden I got this picture that said, like, dude, if I just do this, something's going to happen. I didn't even know what. So I just followed that. And in a very short order, what used to be, I'm sitting at home, my wife leaves to go pick up the kids, and I'm fighting for an hour with the computer because I don't want to look, but I can't get it out of my head. Or what used to be, I see an advertisement or a billboard and it's just still haunting me in the back of my mind. Or what used to be, I step up and look at my kids, but I feel like a weakling or a hypocrite because of what I can't talk to them about this stuff. I'm not even free of it. So what's the point? I go from there to a place where there's no fear. The urges are gone. Like the temptation is gone. The computer doesn't bother me anymore. The guilt and the shame are washed away. And I feel this lightness and this incredible freedom in my life.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do with it because I was like, this is new. Guys, by the way, if you ever, new is good. If you've never heard of it before, that means that it's something new. And that means what you've experienced up till now, all the frustration and stuff. If you're going to go into the unknown, that means you can experience something new.
You're right.
So there I was like, I've never felt this way before. Because it wasn't like the exuberant, I had gone to the bishop and confessed kind of stuff. It was I literally feel free.
Wow.
And go ahead.
I just, that is kind of a different feeling because you're saying it's coming deeper from within. Your soul is saying it's free. You're making that, what I would call that spiritual connection to, whatever higher power, to God, to say, he's saying, yeah, you're free of this.
Yeah. And actually 2 weeks later, that's what happened. So I was driving down the road. It was morning time. I was on my way back from Arizona State University back home. I just finished teaching my classes. And I was getting off the freeway. And this voice just ran through every cell in my body. It wasn't an audible voice. It was some kind of voiceless voice. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
But it said, look, Bob, just want you to know you're not an addict anymore. Never introduce yourself as one again. Now, I don't know how people would connect that kind of experience, but it was a deep certainty. And for me, in that moment, it was very much linked with the name Jesus Christ. Now, I don't push Christianity on anybody.
Right.
I've worked with people from all kinds of religious traditions. You don't need to believe in Jesus Christ in order to experience healing and freedom from this. But for me, that was what happened in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
And all I knew was I drove home like, well, yeah, I knew I was free, but it was like an extra confirmation, an extra certainty that said, yeah, so stop telling people you're an addict, get over it, and move on and do something great with your life. And it became very clear to me 2 things. One, whoever God or whatever life is or whatever the creator is, doesn't require you to go through pain in order to learn lessons. We tend to learn lessons with pain, but what if you could learn them with awesomeness too?
That'd be better.
Yeah. And like, what if you could actually just, I know, but I get a lot of people that are like, yeah, but I'm so grateful for my addiction. Awesome. Move on and be grateful for the rest of your life. Because there's so much more you can experience, so much more good you can do, so many more ways you can contribute or experience life at a deeper level than constantly having to go through pain in order to experience some level of growth.
Yeah.
And the second thing that I realized was, in some way, shape, or form, like, it's really very simple what addiction is, but that the healing itself is something that's already like, we don't do it. It just happens. Like, you don't have to heal yourself. If you just do work in the right way and you handle these little pieces that we put together inside the freedom formula later, but you handle these little pieces, then it happens much like a flower blooms. You just give it water and sunlight and soil, you don't do it, you don't do anything, but then the flower blossoms and a whole new experience is available that you couldn't experience any other way. And that's what freedom's been like. At
Wow.
first I was like, I'm free. But that day, over 7 years ago to today, that day was like a dewdrop in a tsunami of the kind of freedom that I get to experience on a daily basis now.
Wow. Now, would you say there's a difference in your mind between pain and discomfort?
That's a good question. What do you mean by pain?
Well, the pain you're talking about, that's kind of that
like
soul
emotional,
searing, emotional pain because you know you're doing something wrong, versus the discomfort of moving on to something new or learning something new and being uncomfortable because you're new at it.
Yeah, so I would put that in terms of suffering versus discomfort, right? Discomfort, I see, like suffering is suffering, and it comes in various degrees and levels. But ultimately, suffering is something that is just causing an emotional constipation, so to speak. And it's debilitating toward life. Mm-hmm. Whereas the kind of discomfort, at least what it sounds like you're talking about, where you're learning a new skill, where you're like encountering a wall that you didn't know was there, and that gives you an opportunity to walk around the wall. For me, it's like it's a point of view. One person can walk into the wall and see that as a limitation and create and experience a whole lot of pain from it. Another person can walk into the wall and be like, well, dude, what could I do with this wall? And they still walked into the wall.
Right.
So both of them had that initial experience, but how they interpreted it is really what leads to suffering versus, okay, a little bit of discomfort.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked earlier about that root cause. How does your program help men find that root cause to what's causing them to want this isolation and self-medication through whatever their choice of addictive drug of choice, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the common phrase. Yeah. So the idea showed up in me like that there's something underneath the hood. And the idea that pornography is actually the solution that I'd come up with and not the problem, that I had to go looking for the problem then. Like, but if porn feels good, how is it a problem? And then that's what helped me open up. Like, well, because a lot of people want to say, well, because it feels good, like God made us with this body and the body's the problem. But I didn't believe the body was the problem at all. For me, the body is like this tremendous opportunity for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
It amplifies everything going on in your mind, everything going on spiritually, and gives you a handle on it so that you can work with it in a very concrete fashion. But too many people see the body as a stumbling block instead of a stepping stone. And so when I realized, I didn't really want to sit there and look at the body that way. So I was like, it's not the body. It's not God's fault I'm a porn addict. He made me a guy. It's his fault. You know? And so I was like, well, okay, so then what is it? What is it that when it's not, okay, I'm a guy. Yeah, my body says hi to pretty women. That's how it's designed. Way to go. But when they're not in the room and it's still trying to wave hello, there's a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
So what's making that happen? And that's when I had to start looking. And I started to recognize what some people, when they're looking at root issues, if you talk to a lot of people, the people that start to look this way, the first thing they look at is emotions. And they start to be like, well, when you're stressed or when you're lonely or when you're bored or when you're whatever, what are the emotions that lead you then to the behavior? And they start to link up these emotions as the emotion is really the root issue. And so at first, that's what I went to look at. I was like, yeah, it's the emotions. And sometimes I was stressed. Sometimes I was lonely. Sometimes I was bored. And people are like, bored? Why would boredom lead you there? And that caused me a question. And then sometimes I was like, it had been a really good day. And then I'd have a moment where I was by myself again. And then all of a sudden I'd end up back in it. And I was like, what? It was a good day. I don't understand why I'm going back to it. I wasn't stressed. And so that's when I had to look a little bit deeper. okay, when I have a moment by myself, what is it inside me that makes it so I can't stand my own company? And I need to go looking somewhere else in order to feel better.
Right.
And that level of like, well, why am I such bad company for myself? I had to really look deep, and I had to find out what was at the bottom of it. And ultimately what I started to discover was, the way I describe it now is basically there's 4 levels of freedom. And the first level is behavior. And anybody can get free of any kind of addiction at that level if you just put them in a straitjacket, like
force the behavior.
Force the behavior. Yeah. You know those playgrounds with the tree that has the big pole that has the buckets that fill up with water and then they splash from time to time. You know those? Mm-hmm. Like ultimately that's addiction. So the bucket's filling up. We don't want the bucket to spill. So let's nail the bucket in place. Fine. No problem. Oh no, hold on. We got to cope with it because there's still water filling the bucket. So we'll bail water too. We'll teach them how to bail water. Mm-hmm. And so that's ultimately what I found was, well, we'll teach you how to control the behavior. Let's put some porn filters in place. Let's put passwords in place. So every time you go anywhere remotely near pornography, your computer barks at you and you feel like a dork and you feel like if anybody let you out of the cave, you would wreck things and you wander around after your wife like some broken puppy dog that's like, well, I'll never be able to repay this debt, honey. What can I do to help you out? And you give up on your own dreams and your own desires for life and your own willingness to even try because of fear of falling back down. But we can put some things in place. We can make it so you never see porn again, though that's going to be really difficult moving forward in this society.
Right.
And, and then we'll teach you how to bail water. And sure, you could do that, except what about all the porn that's already in my head?
Yeah.
How do you get rid of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
I know. So I had to discover a way to delete it, which was super powerful. And using similar methods, how to make it so that things that used to be quote unquote triggers no longer caused a reaction in me. I could be around them. It didn't bother me. Not because I was out seeking pornography or wanting to be around it, but you can't control it in this society.
Right.
So level 2 is the emotional one, right? Where you're, okay, I'm free in behavior. I've nailed the bucket in place, but now it's starting to get heavy because the water's still dumping in. So let's teach you how to bail water so that life's a little lighter. So now you develop emotional skills. Okay, we got skill sets. I can delete porn. I can scoop stuff out. I can make it so it's not heavy. But ultimately, that's a lifelong fight. And that's why everybody says you'll be fighting it for the rest of your life. The water's still coming in.
Right.
So for the rest of your life, you're going to be holding the bucket in place and bailing water. And I didn't want that. So then the next level becomes thought. Because every thought you have, your body reacts to. An emotion is nothing more than your body responding to what went on in your brain. And so what if I could shift the effect of my thoughts on me so that it no longer created a reaction in me? So I could have a thought, but it doesn't affect me, or not even have a thought at all. How could I be free at the level of thought? And that took some work. A lot of work to be able to get to the point where my thoughts no longer created this mayhem in me and I could start to catch things at the level of thought. But still, where did thoughts come from? I asked myself. And that's where we get to the root issue. So when we're talking about a root issue, we're not talking about, the fact that you're a human being and you have emotions. Emotions are amazing. And when you have control over them, they can become an adventure instead of an accident.
Yeah.
You can just hey, dude, do I want to feel sad right now? Yes, my friend is sad. If I go into sadness, I can meet them where they're at. And then I can come back out whenever I want. And maybe they'll come out with me because I'm in control of my emotions. Hey, if I want to get mad right now, sure, it's a little toxic to the human system, but I can clean my garage really well when I get mad. Emotions now become fuel. And I looked at Jesus. And I was like, the dude took a whip to people in the temple and kicked cattle. I mean, I'm sure PETA would have had a heyday. Clearly he was using some emotional power for benefit, for what he was trying to accomplish. And he wept at times and he did other things. So it's not like emotions were a bad thing and I didn't want to become emotionless.
Right.
So then came thought. And then after that, well, where does thought come from? And it really comes down to how you see yourself in the world. Your perspective of what reality is ultimately determines what your thoughts are. For me, I couldn't find the root issue on my own. For me, it was a series of experiences where someone else showed up and led me to it and helped me see through all of my head junk to see something that I just had accepted as a part of reality. I never would have thought to question it because it was a fact to me. This is the way the world is. It would be like someone saying, well, what's your root issue? Well, the sun rises in the morning. Well, that's not a root issue. That's just the way the world works.
Right.
Yeah, but what if you're just making that up? What? I'm not making it up. It felt like that much of a fact to me, which is why it's very difficult. I've never seen anybody find it on their own because you'll literally just overlook it because it's a fact, or you'll reassert it because that's just the way the world is. That's how I am. Mm-hmm. And so finding this and then resolving it, literally, like within 4 days, my entire life changed.
Wow. That's amazing. And we all have those kind of things. I think I call that a mental map, something we developed as we grew. And these are the realities of our childhood. And as we grow through adolescence and into adulthood, we made this map and now it's broken.
Yeah, there's this great story of a map by a guy by the name of E.F. Schumacher. He wrote the book, A Guide for the Perplexed. It's a little bit heady in terms of philosophical language. Mm-hmm. I think he wrote it in the 70s, and he's talking about all these different layers of knowledge. But in the beginning, he mentions he went on a trip to Russia, and he was looking for a church, a specific church that he wanted to go visit. And he's looking on the map, and he's standing in the square with the church, and he can find the square, but the church isn't listed on it. And so he's what? I don't understand. Like maybe we're in the wrong spot. He's really confused. And so then he goes to a local and he says, look, we're looking for this church on the map, but like, I can't find it on the map anywhere. And they said, oh no, it's not going to be on the map. He said, why not? Well, because that's a living church. We don't put living churches on our maps.
Oh.
And so suddenly he had this like sudden realization that all the maps that he'd been given for his life, all the ones he'd created, who's deciding what goes on them and how accurate are they to reality?
Right. Yeah. So I guess your process then is helping men understand or helping people understand this mental map, this root truth that they've accepted that may be a false truth.
Oh, it's always a false truth. There's nothing we can concoct about life that would ever accurately describe the universe. Mm-hmm. Like if it's spoken in words, it's always a lie. Because words are just sounds coming out of a mouth. There's no way that they could possibly encapsulate the whole of what is real, right?
Right.
And so it's almost always a lie, but it's a survival mechanism. Meaning somewhere in their life, they came up with this because it helped them cope with the world. For instance, if I believe that I'm worthless, let me give you a story. This will work. I'm going to make this up. It's a little parable, right? Dad comes home from work. Now, it's been a rough 6 months on the job. They're barely making ends meet financially as it is. His boss is riding him hard for a new deadline. So he comes in the front door. Mom's busy kind of finishing up the touches on dinner. He's absent-mindedly stressing about work. Takes off his shoes, puts them in the little shoe storage spot, goes into the room. His wife says, hey, go say hi to the kids, So he walks into the room to say hi to the two kids. Mm-hmm. And he steps on the Legos. In that minute, unintentionally, with all the stress and strain that he's dealing with, he just explodes on the first thing in sight, which happens to be the little kid sitting in the middle of the floor. 3 years old, playing with Legos, having a good time. Now, 3-year-old's looking around the room, trying to understand what happened. A giant, who he knows as dad, who's literally 3-4 times his size, walks into the room. and just explodes in pure anger. He hears the sound, he feels the energy of it, and he's trying to figure out what happened, because this is definitely unpleasant and I don't want to live through this again.
Right.
Looks around the room. It's clearly not the Legos. Those are not the problem, because that's an improvement on the decor to a 3-year-old. The floor is boring as it stands. The Legos are colorful. There's no ants in them. You can build stuff with them, take them apart, throw them at your brother. You can stick them in your mouth. Like, it's an amazing opportunity. So clearly it's not the Legos. So he looks up at Dad and he's like, well, okay, so it's not the Legos, whatever it is. And in his 3-year-old mind just figures out somehow, probably not in words, oh, maybe I make dads upset. Maybe it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I hurt people.
Yeah.
And so from that point on in his life, let's assume that this was so intense that it was that, right? Maybe this happened several times over the course of months and months and months. And so he just kind of distilled it over time. Or maybe it was a big traumatic event like it is for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, he comes up with this conclusion that father figures, he hurts them, right? So now what happens? Now all of a sudden, all of his thinking is around this. Oh, dude, I hurt dads. So what kinds of things can I do to prevent dad from yelling at me again? Because I don't want to experience that. And so now his thought processes start to get shifted. His emotions get shifted. When dad walks in the room, he's anxious, like just making sure, right?
Right.
And dad becomes a trigger, so to speak. And, he avoids dad when he comes home from work at certain times in the day, or he does a ton to please him, and his behavior goes all over the map. Sometimes it's contrary to what you would think. He goes into school, and every father figure in school now he's responding to. And he's just doing everything he can, but he develops this complex around authority figures.
Right.
Well, guess what? His twin brother was in the room on the side playing with the Legos, and he saw the whole thing goes down, and he said, Dad's an idiot, or whatever he said in response to what happened. And so for the rest of his life, let's say he's adopted this thing. So now he's going through life believing all father figures are idiots. So he's very rebellious. He disregards what dad says. He laughs at him. He's, deals with whatever he deals with, but never takes him seriously. He's having a jolly good time until one day he becomes a dad. And now the worry sets in. Hold on. Dads are idiots. So now he starts to worry about him being just like his dad. Mm. And so now he starts to go overboard being the father and starts to stress out and worry about it and all kinds of other stuff. Just because somewhere along the way in his mental map, he picked out the way the world was. Powerful coping mechanism for him for a period of time, but then later caused mayhem.
Right. Okay.
I guess what I was trying to say there is that what we do is, yes, we help people figure out what that is for them. Mm-hmm. It's unique to every single person. Okay. And there's no two people that have ever been the same among the hundreds that we've worked with. It's just never the same. It's very unique to each individual. And the way to release it is a very unique experience for each individual. But we don't just leave them there. Because if you take the backpack off, they're carrying this big old mountain gorilla on their back. Then you take it off. Now they're lighter, but they haven't changed the direction of their life. Right. And so we have to also teach them how to change direction, because, the Buddha said it this way: if you don't change directions, you might end up where you're headed. So, yeah. So we got to do that for them too. Right. And that's what helps you to end it permanently, is not just alleviating the load, but also developing the skills that enable you to know with confidence that you can handle whatever life comes at you with without having to worry anymore. And then building your life in a way so that it's focused on creating something so powerful there's not even room for the other one.
Right. So you redraw that mental map after you've taken the load off, saying, okay, here's some new skills, here's some new directions, here's where that church really is on the map. And so you need to mark some things yourself as you learn these new skills and redraw your map.
Yeah, constantly asking, is my mental map really accurate? What if I'm wrong?
Yeah. Okay. So what advice, now that we've talked through these things, what advice would you give to someone that that is seeking to overcome an addiction or seeking to change their life?
That's a good question. I love that you put both people in that category, seeking to change their life versus seeking to overcome an addiction. Because ultimately, an addiction is a solution. It's a cure. It's a problem to what's really going on under the hood.
Right.
And, we've worked with people who aren't addicts. They're dealing with depression or anxiety and stuff too. They want to change their life. The way we put out the freedom formula is basically like this. You've got a few different things to do. One, you got to find and solve what's at the bottom of it. What's causing it in the first place? You can strong arm it. You can force your way through it. There's all kinds of tools to do it. Like, people use visualizations and affirmations and declarations, and there's vision boards, and there's hundreds of different ways that people try to sledgehammer their way into being a new person. But the fastest and easiest way is to just put out the fire, and then you don't have to keep trying to throw water at smoke.
Okay.
So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Second piece is you're going to have to learn new skills. If you're trying to, for instance, start a business, chances are you're going to suck at business when you start. There's just no two ways about it. Your skills you got to learn, and it doesn't matter how good your product is, doesn't matter how good your service is. If you don't have the skill sets to be able to communicate that well or help people get the help, then you're going to have to learn new skills and be okay with that. But don't take the need to learn skills as an indication that you're broken. Just take it as an indication that you don't have the skills yet. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm finding that same thing myself doing this show. Is there's some skills that I've been short on, and I'm learning through this process of talking to people, and I can do the technical things. I'm a software engineer, so I know how to run the computer and I know how to run software. But this interview technique and talking to people and getting information, that is a skill I've been working on myself. And it's like, man, I'm bad at this when I first started.
Yeah, I had a business coach once. He said, dude, when you first start, you're going to suck. And then you'll suck less. And then you'll suck less. And then you'll suck less. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're actually kind of good. And then you'll get better. Yeah. And then you'll get better until you're amazing at it. Yeah. But at first you're going to suck. So give yourself permission to suck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, thank you. I think that's a help. So skills is important. The third thing, and this is one that like nobody on the planet is really doing when it comes to especially addiction recovery, but anything, which is to build it around your own natural instincts and way of approaching things. Because you've developed or been given a series of strengths and gifts from the time you were a little one, and you've developed some and others just came naturally to you. And too many people are busy trying to be like, hey, you need to be like this. And if you're not like this, you're not going to be successful. And sometimes this is the exact opposite of the way you're wired. And so it starts to feel like for the rest of my life, I'm going to have to be somebody else. When the reality is the greatest gift you could give the world is to be yourself, 100% happy and just on fire with life. And that means paying attention to the gifts that you were already given, maybe considering that when God declared creation good, he meant it, and that there was nothing to fix about it.
Right.
And so the idea here is, and this is something we do really, really intensely, is we take them through our one-on-one clients, we take them through an assessment, we really customize everything. So it's not take a square peg and stick it through a round hole, but how about we build a square hole?
Right.
Make sure the glove really fits so that by the time they're done, the only thing they need to do to be free is be themselves. Now they have new skills, but even the skills they've learned to use based on their own natural gifts so that they don't have to be anybody else. They can just be themselves. And if you're building a business, same thing. Someone's going to tell you, oh, you need to like blog or do guest blogs, or you need to start a podcast. You need to do whatever. There's lots of different ways to do it. Whichever one's calling to you. What are your natural gifts? How about you approach it in a way that is really powerful based on how you operate naturally, and then use that as a catapult to really make it go seamlessly for you instead of always working against your own grain, because that builds a lot of external friction. That's what tends to start leading people back to a lot of other stuff that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Get out of your own way, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, really, you don't need to be anybody else. You just need to be yourself.
Yeah.
The last piece of the puzzle is just choice. You have to choose to change. And that's easier said than done. Too many addicts say, yeah, I want to choose to change. And they don't. Because you have to choose with your mind. You have to choose with your lips. You have to choose with your body. You have to choose with your whole soul. It's not just, well, I'm going to choose with my words, but everything else goes against it. And so there are ways to orchestrate that choice. There are ways to help people really make that choice. But ultimately, ask yourself, what would it take for me to just choose this with my whole self?
Yeah.
And see what comes,
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. That's as I've been working on myself, trying to build up this who I am. I'm trained as an engineer, and that's who I was thinking I was, but I really am not.
Mm.
And I'm finding as I push through some of those things and learn how to talk with people, I've kind of described myself in all my youth and growing up as kind of a chameleon. And so
Yeah.
I when I'm with somebody, I like the things they like, and I can disappear in a crowd, and I really didn't know who Jay was.
Mm-hmm.
And so making these changes, finding out where in my mental map where that came in, where it was easier to hide, and trying to work on those feelings is really what brought out this podcast, and wanting to share how I'm rebuilding my life and
Mm-hmm.
help other people with these kind of things too. And maybe something I say might help someone else.
It's really easy to feel that way. I mean, I know for a lot of my life, I've been the same way. It's easy to be a chameleon. When you devalue yourself, you devalue your own message. You feel like maybe you don't even feel like you're the worst in the world, but never the best. You always
Right.
like second or third or even the bottom, just depending on the crowd you're with. And rather than experience fear of missing out on what everybody else is going to have or experience the scorn of the group, it's really easy to just be a chameleon.
Yeah.
And to anybody feeling that, first, there's nothing wrong with being a chameleon. God made chameleons, for crying out loud.
Yes, he did.
So that's a powerful skill that humans have. More than chameleons, think about how many times we change clothes and we change accents and we change foods. We change all kinds of stuff. We're really, it's one ability that humans have, and it can serve you well. So you don't need to beat yourself up about being a chameleon. But the second thing I would say is, but don't be a chameleon just because you feel like who you really are isn't worth much.
Right.
Because who you really are is probably more glorious than you could conceivably even imagine.
Yeah.
And as soon as you touch into that, life takes on a whole different hue.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That is nice to hear from other people.
Yeah.
So let's, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get in touch with you if they want to become part of this or learn more about the freedom?
Yeah. So you can head to our website, liberateaman.com.
Okay.
It is for women too, not just men. We're rebranding to the Freedom Specialists so women don't feel left out. That's coming, but liberateaman.com.
Okay.
And you can sign up for a phone call if you want. We're building some other things here and there to try and help people out. But really, we'll just look at your situation, see what's going on, and see if we've got some solutions that'll help you. And if not, we'll just point you in whatever direction we feel like is going to be a good direction for you, because we want you to make the best decision for your life that you can. So if you want to come and really participate this and just kick addiction or whatever else is holding you back for, and within a few weeks, then let's get it on. Life is too short to wait.
Yeah.
So
life is definitely too short to play with these thoughts that are holding you back from where you can be. Because I've seen so many people grow once they take that step, and their lives are becoming amazing. People have seen write books and do the things that they really want to do in their lives. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was just on the phone today with a guy. He's 57. So for decades, he's been dealing in the same spot. And all we're just talking to him with is like, dude, how fast do you want to actually just get another shot at life, a second lease on life? Mm. And we work with people in their 70s too. So there's no age. Yeah. There's no time limit on it. Life is still here if you're hearing this. So life is calling you, folks. It's time. Step up and enjoy it instead of carrying all that past baggage with you. What if you could just walk into your life with amnesia now and have a good time, as if it didn't happen before? So that's what we really want to create for people. And our goal is really to reach millions, at least 1 million, but we're working on it.
Well, hopefully I can help you reach another 30 or 40 people here with my podcast. So.
In time.
That's right. So, okay, just to reiterate, liberateaman.com is your website. If you want to change your life today, go there and see what Bob and his program can do for you. So I appreciate you being with me here today, Bob, and all the insights and thoughts that you had. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Just one. A lot of people who come to us, they've been told so long that it's not possible to be free like that. It's not possible to end a fight with addiction and not have to fight it again. It's not possible. All the science says something different. And there are other people who are dealing with other things in life where they feel on the inside like it's not possible to be free. And the phrase that comes up is, this just sounds too good to be true. And while there may be some things on the planet that are lies and that are promising things that aren't true, I just have you question this one phrase and ask yourself, since when was there a limit on how good the truth could be?
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you spending time with me today.
My pleasure.
And I hope we touch many, many lives together. So.
Yeah, well, I hope so too, man.
As always, thank you for listening to Rebuilding. I hope that you have heard something today that will help you on your path to rebuilding your life. If something resonated, if you felt a call to action, please take that action and rebuild. Let me know what you think of today's show or any of my shows. You can leave comments at rebuilding.podbean.com or email at j@jwalter.com. I would love to hear from you. Comments, suggestions, and topics that you would like me to cover are always welcome. Remember, a dream written down with a deadline is a goal, and a goal achieved is a dream come true. Until next time, I am Jay Walter, and I am always rebuilding.